Hello, healthy people, and welcome back to Organelle. Today we map a journey across 40 years and 4 continents. This is a story of how health has evolved and how Lionel Godwin has evolved with it. From first finding his purpose in rural New South Wales to studying epigenetics in Germany, Lionel is a powerhouse of a practitioner, and it is an absolute pleasure to be sharing his tale with you. As always, I'm Xavier Greenhalgh, and as you may have guessed, joining me is none other than the Organelle digital health platform's leading practitioner, Lionel Godwin. So, without further ado, let's all take the next best step on our health journeys. Lionel, you glorious superstar. I hope you're excited today because we are talking about something that couldn't be closer to your heart. And that is, of course, your story. As the heart and soul of Organelle, and the inspiration for everything that we've built over the last 18 months is really important, I think. Just get that out to the people because it's such an empowering and inspiring tale. Your 40 years of health across multiple continents and multiple different professions. So, if you would, could you just take it away with where did your fascination with health first start?
My fascination with health started when I was 10. Um, Prior to that, I was always interested in training. I've always been an obsessive trainer since I was 4 years of age. My earliest memories are of riding my bike at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to the local pool to participate in swimming training. And from there, I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to represent the territory in a number of different sports, all the way through to my adult life. But at 10 years of age, my grandmother, who was one of my greatest inspirations in life by the example that she set, gave me a book from a guy called Percy Cerruti. Percy Cerruti was a coach of a famous Australian athlete at the time, a guy called Herb Elliott. And what Percy Cerruti did and talked about in his book was the different types of training that he put his athletes through, particularly Herb. But he also made a connection which resonated with me and has resonated with me from that day to this about the significance of food. So he was the first person that I'd ever come across that made a connection between athletic performance, health and well-being, and nutrition. And for me, that was just like the greatest bit of information I could have ever received. I just was completely blown away by the fact that food was such a significant part of not only athletic performance, but overall health and well-being for whatever reason. Probably because of the fact that I was only 10, I'd never made that connection. But having made that connection through that book, it just became my absolute obsession and fascination to learn more, to practice more, and to share more around nutrition and the benefits of it.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear that you started so young. I was just so enthused about it. I'd like to talk a little bit about your professional career, but first I think we should probably brief the audience on why you are such a juggernaut when it comes to health. You've been through probably more lives than most felines, and any
Yes.
lesser man would be dead 10 times over. You want to take us through that?
Yeah. So I have had a really, really, really fortunate life, but unfortunately, I've also had a lot of injuries and a lot of illness. And it's my absolute belief that the only reason that I'm still here today and have survived not only the trauma injuries that I've had, but the uh, health complications that I've had is purely and simply because of the fitness base that I've always had, but also the significant nutritional base that I built for myself from a very, very young age. After reading Percy Cerruti's book at 10, I made it my mission in life to never drink soft drink, never eat lollies, never eat crap foods, because I just made that connection that if I was to do that, that was going to undermine me. I also had a lot of, I was always a people watcher, and I saw from a very young age, particularly once I had the awareness of eating well, that I watched people, and there were people that I grew up absolutely idolizing. And one of the things that they all had in common was the fact that one, they never drank alcohol. two, they never smoked, and three, they always seemed to exercise. And that again really sowed a seed with me that it was so important that I make that my lifestyle as well. Because I also saw conversely those that did drink a lot and those that smoke, they were always unwell. They weren't as good athletes as the others that didn't. A lot of them were always angry, and these things just stuck in my mind. And I thought, well, there's got to be something to this. And so I used that people watching to really guide myself on my pathway. Um, and then I allowed myself to, put myself in a situation where I could learn. I traveled the world. I was very lucky that I was able to study in India. I was able to study in Germany. I was able to study in South Korea. I was also able to study here in Australia at various stages throughout my life. But I also, as part of that study and as part of that learning, I was able to apply it to circumstances within my own life. So, to date, I've had 22 knee surgeries. I've had both my kneecaps realigned. I've had that many arthroscopes and stuff on my knees that I've given up counting them. I've had 5 shoulder reconstructions. I've had a broken jaw in 2 places. I suffered 3 heart attacks in a week in 2018. I had pulmonary embolisms from the COVID injection in 2020. I'm currently being treated for smoldering myeloma, which I get treatment for every 2 months. Um, I've also had a broken neck from a car accident, which took me 18 months to recover from. Luckily, I persevered. Again, within 3 weeks of the accident of my broken neck, I went back into the gym. I could only use my left side. I couldn't use my right side. I was completely debilitated on my right side. It took me 18 months to reconstruct my right side and get it back to a fully functional uh, body part again. After my heart attacks, within 2 weeks of my heart attacks, I was back in the gym training again, much to the disgust of my surgeon. But I've been able to apply the lessons that I learnt to myself, and I do honestly believe that the only reason that I'm here today is because of the fact I have such a clear understanding of the importance of movement and nutrition, but I've also, most importantly, been able to apply it to myself on a day-to-day basis, which has been for me an absolute salvation.
That is a staggering laundry list of damage. I,
It
if I
is.
was you, that would be my resume. Indestructible. Okay,
Yes.
so talk us about how you first actually got into health professionally. What was your first job in the field?
So I was a fireman for many, many years. But whilst I was a fireman, we just had a lot of time on our hands. We used to do 2 day shifts, 2 night shifts, and have 4 days off. So I had heaps of time on my hands. And at the time within the fire service, we were really starting to become aware, very, very and supportive of the fact that working in emergency services, we need to be at our peak most of the time, and we need to be physically very able to deal in really stressful situations. So I was encouraged to study in the fire service. So I did. I started studying nutrition and exercise physiology whilst in the fire service, and then moved through not only that study at the Australian College of Natural Therapies and Charles Darwin University, then at Deakin University. I then set myself on a pathway of further learning and travel to India, travel to Germany, and travel to South Korea, specifically to learn different aspects of health and wellness. So India was about learning Ayurvedic medicine and Ayurvedic practices, which I still practice personally every day with my Ayurvedic stretching. I did a epigenetic learnings in Germany, where I learnt how to understand our epigenetic markers and how we can, really um, control aspects of them. And in South Korea, I studied body composition and, in fact, brought the first body composition analysis machine using electrical impedance to Australia. They allowed me to go down the pathway of more evidence-based testing. And evidence-based testing became, you know, my preferred way of being able to help people. In 2009 or 2010, I started practicing using evidence, so using blood works, epigenetic testing, and body composition. And that was the forerunner to Organelle. It was through practicing this way that I thought, there's so many advances now in the way we can test and monitor that I thought it would be the way of the future. I also knew, though, that I was limited in my own scope, in that I could only see one client at a time, and that the only way that we could try and serve people en masse was to go down a digital pathway. And as a consequence of that, the idea for organelles started to formulate in my mind. And over the years, I discussed the idea with many people. And then through those conversations, led myself to you guys at Square IQ, and then the subsequent development of the UI, UX, and artificial intelligence that we now use here at Organelle.
Yeah, that's you covered a lot there. I want to double back right to the beginning, just because you're originally this university student, you're ex firefighter, spent all these years at Deakin, you graduated with your degree, and then you're immediately like, okay, let's go to India now and study more. What happened there? What drove a young aspirational like?
No, I wasn't young. I was in my 40s when I did that. I It came about as a consequence of a chance meeting that I had with a guy at a seminar called Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra was a leader in curing cancer at the time. He was a Western trained medical specialist, but of Eastern origins. And um, at his seminar, I purchased a book called Perfect Health by Deepak Chopra. It's a great read. I recommend anybody who would like to really delve more into different aspects of health and well-being to have a look at the book, The Perfect Health by Deepak Chopra. And I was just fascinated with Ayurvedic medicine. Perfect Health talks about Ayurvedic medicine, and it really resonates around its primary message is around the body's capacity to heal and to heal itself, as long as we create the conditions for healing. And so that was where that just, again, it was just so connected to my way of thinking anyway, because I always believed that I was in control of my health and well-being through my actions. And that just resonated with me. It was such a profound read for me that I just knew that I needed to go and explore it more, which I did. Um, then, as part of that natural journey of learning, I came across epigenetics, which was at the time being pushed by a guy called Dr. Bruce Lipton, who was one of the leading um, practitioners out of America at the time, and was very heavily involved in stem cell research. So again, it just resonated with me. This was all what the human body is made up of, and there are elements, all of which we could control through nutrition and movement. So that became another obsession. I learned then and got qualified and licensed to do epigenetic testing, which then led me to body composition analysis, um, and there were some innovations out of South Korea around body composition analysis machines using what's known as an in-body machine. The in-body machine uses electrical impedance to look at body composition. It's a machine that is very, very accurate. There's a machine that hospitals use called a DEXA machine, which uses radiation to look at our human body composition. The in-body machine is a medical graded piece of equipment that is within 2% accuracy of a DEXA machine. So it just enabled me to use evidence as a practitioner, which then enabled me to give almost instant feedback to my clients around what was going on with them. So, it was just, for me, it enabled me to really give people hope. On the first day that they came and saw me or had a consultation with me, it meant that I could let them leave after that very first consultation with some idea of what was going on with them and with a plan to move forward. And that was always really important to me, because a lot of people get frustrated or lose motivation if they, if they don't get something to do immediately. They can really then struggle to embrace the journey. And it's always been really important for me that people embrace the journey, because I I'm absolutely committed to try to help people become active participants in their own health and wellness journey, because it's it's the thing that we can control. We can control our health and wellness journey if we understand what elements of it we need to control first and foremost, and how we can develop a really greater understanding of where we sit. And so I like to try and help people build an understanding of what their baseline health and wellness looks like. Once we understand what that baseline looks like, how do we then build layers and layers and layers and layers and layers on top of it? And my philosophy in working with people was to be an educator rather than someone who just pontificated. And my reason for wanting to be an educator was that I truly believe that if I could teach people everything they needed to know about owning their own journey of health and wellness, they wouldn't need me again, because they would have such a good understanding of what they needed to do and what measurements they could use to really own and control their journey of health and wellness. My accountant didn't like that model, because I was effectively making myself redundant. But it means more to me than anything for people to have such a good understanding of of their own health and wellness and the controllables within that, that then enables them to really own the journey. And that's what's important. As individuals, we should never be looking at generic practices. We should always be looking at us as individuals and owning our journey of health and wellness. And that's what I've done personally. It stood me in good stead. I believe I'm still here today because of the journey that I've been on personally. And I hope that I've been able to help, you know, all of the clients that I've had over the years, make that transition from having excuses or blaming someone else to actually owning their journey and becoming, that active participant in their own health and wellness.
Okay, so you came back from overseas carrying the Australia's first in-body composition analysis machine. You landed on shores. You went back to the hometown. You started up your first practice there. Was that human potential?
No, no, no.
You,
I prior to that, I had Nature's Engineering, which I started in Perth. That was called Nature's Engineering, and that's because I honestly believe that the human body is a marvel of Nature's Engineering. So that was the name of my health and wellness business in Perth. That was more around working in the corporate sector and working with executives to make them more accountable to themselves. Because what I found was executives were quick to blame everybody else except themselves, but as part of Nature's Engineering, it was about making sure that we made them accountable to themselves and set an example for everybody else. From there, I moved into what was called human optimization and on-track eating. And on-track eating and human optimization were the two businesses that I operated for 14 years. And then as a consequence of that, transitioned into down the Organelle pathway.
I see. There's such a long list of both educational experience and business ventures, all deeply involved in health. I'd love to know, how has your role evolved over time in there? Because you probably started as something of a consultant for these executives, then you've transitioned into a business owner in some capacity, and now with Organelle, you've come back to being a direct founding consultant.
Yeah, it's changed in that I in 1983 when I first started studying, I opened my first gym, and now I've subsequently had a couple of gyms since then. But those days, it was very much about trial and error. It was very much about, okay, let's see, let's try this for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks and see how things go. Then I transitioned into making people more accountable for themselves, and that was where Nature's Engineering came in to play. But then I started down the pathway of evidence based, and it's the evidence based that has been the most rewarding, because it's one that allows for there to be no doubt about what we're doing, and that's why Organelle is so important to me. I want people to have as much information about themselves that they can have, so that they can feel as though they are an active participant in their health and wellness journey. So that's where it's changed the most. As I said, it was very much hit and miss in the early days. I was very naive as well. I was only very new into the industry, and it was virtually learning on the job, to be honest, and using myself as a guinea pig as well. I can remember, when I first opened up the gym, training mates and clients and stuff, and really just it was a fly by the seat of your pants type scenario. But then as I became more skilled and more comfortable and more confident, and had the value of years of learning, I became much better at it. But then I realized that there were still too many gaps, and not having evidence was, the biggest impediment that we had. I just thought that without accurate evidence, how could I realistically give advice to people if we didn't know exactly what it was we were dealing with or talking about?
Would you have any advice for a younger person who's in something akin to your shoes? Someone who's going into health, maybe they're studying at university, planning to open a practice of some kind, they've got a few years' experience, and that they're just not really sure what they're doing or what they're aiming towards. If you could give that person one piece of advice, what would it be?
To be certain of the pathway, the beauty of the health and wellness industry now, irrespective of whether you're looking at nutrition, exercise physiology, medicine, research, hematology, oncology, pediatrics, or whatever. There are just so many pathways. Uh, Understand where your skill set is best suited, or where your goals and aspirations are best suited towards, because there are so many areas you can specialize in now, and there's so much assistance that you can give. The other thing is to try and be a practitioner that looks at the individual rather than um, a generic way of doing things, if that makes sense. I just think it's incumbent upon all people within the health and wellness industry, and I know the system doesn't allow it, and I know the pressures on the system, but the more individual advice and assistance and relationships you can build with your clients, and the more the skills that you learn can allow you to become that type of practitioner, I think the better off we all are. Now, I know that's not attainable for a lot of people. Our systems don't really allow it. But one of the things that I want to achieve with Organelle is to be able to spend more time with our clients. And that's just not me, that's all the practitioners that we have within Organelle. I want people to be able to have the time and the access to their health and wellness professional, so that they are on a supported journey all the way through. So, if I was to give advice to someone coming into the industry, be very certain of the pathway that you want to go down, and understand that there are thousands of them within the health and wellness sector. Be very clear about what you want to be, and if possible, be as committed a practitioner as you can possibly be to each and every individual that you come across.
That seems like a fantastic place to leave it to me. Thank you so much for sharing your story with everyone today, Lionel.
That's absolutely my pleasure. I hope it wasn't boring for people, but yeah, it's been a good life. Good on you. Thanks, Avi.